Did you know Elvis Presley had a secret girlfriend while he was in the army who lived at his house in Germany for 14 months? Who was it? It wasn't Priscilla. Welcome to this episode of the Loving the King podcast. I'm Trina Young, the Elvis News and Travel Examiner and author of 3 Elvis books. On November 3rd, 1958, Private Elvis Presley traveled with his scout platoon to the U.S. Army training area at Grafenwöhr for 6 weeks of reconnaissance maneuvers. This was the main training area in Germany for all U.S. troops and is located near the Czechoslovakian border. During those 6 weeks, Elvis would meet a German-American girl who became very special to him. Notably, Elvis would not meet Priscilla in Germany for another 10 months. Elvis was a frequent visitor to the movie theater on the base. One night at the movies, he met a German-American fan named Elizabeth Stefaniak. Her mother was German and her stepfather was an American Army sergeant. Elizabeth and her parents and younger sister lived in dependent housing on the post. She had been coming every night to the theater to try and meet Elvis, who was always accompanied by Rex Mansfield and another GI named Johnny Lang. After about a week, Elizabeth got the opportunity on November 20th to ask Johnny if he could get Presley's autograph for her. As a result, Elvis told Rex to go get Elizabeth and ask her to join him while watching the movie. It was a prelude of things to come as Rex Mansfield walked Elizabeth down the movie aisle. However, all of Elizabeth's focus at the time was on Elvis. She had been a huge fan of his since seeing him on the Ed Sullivan Show. "I thought I was going to faint," recalled Elizabeth, who was 19 years old at the time. "All I wanted was his autograph, and now I was invited to join him. Not even in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine this would happen. I was shaking from excitement and had butterflies in my stomach that wouldn't settle down." Elvis and Elizabeth hit it off that night. He was very taken with her. For the next 6 nights, Elizabeth would meet Elvis at the theater, and then he would walk her home. Elizabeth's German-speaking skills would come in handy, ensuring that her relationship with Elvis would not end once he left Grafenwöhr. Elvis felt at home with Elizabeth and her family and would come over for breakfast while he was in Grafenwöhr. He had a certain way he liked his food, Elizabeth explained, and of course the army wasn't going to serve him anything different, so he'd come to the kitchen and he'd say to Mother, "Ella, would you fix me some bacon, eggs, and toast?" He had to have his bacon almost burned, and his eggs had to be flipped over 10 times. He'd come by in a Jeep, and I could hear the Jeep coming. Unquote. On November 27th, Elvis dropped in unannounced for Thanksgiving dinner with Elizabeth and her family. This would be the first Thanksgiving Elvis spent without his mother. Elizabeth sensed that Elvis was missing his family. Quote, "I could see how much Elvis loved and adored his mother by the way he described how special she was and how much he missed her," Elizabeth explained. He painfully mentioned that his dad was already dating other women, which brought tears to his eyes. Unquote. Before Elvis left Grafenwöhr, the U.S. Army scheduled a press conference for him at 10 a.m. on December 16, 1958. However, Elvis was nowhere to be found. After a rough 6 weeks of field training, it seemed that Elvis had been prematurely indulging in some R&R, rest and recuperation. He finally showed up behind the scenes, looking disheveled, with lipstick all over his face. According to Sergeant Jones, the soldiers in his platoon rushed to Presley's aid and helped clean him up so he would be presentable to all the reporters waiting. Elvis indicated later that the girl he had been kissing was Elizabeth Stefaniak. Soon after Elvis left Grafenwöhr, he would arrange for Elizabeth to move in with him and his family in Bad Nauheim. She would be his fan mail secretary, handling the letters from German-speaking fans, as well as his secret live-in girlfriend. Find out what happened over the next year between Elvis and Elizabeth in my book about Elvis Presley's 2 years in the Army called Elvis the Army Years Uncovered. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and ring the bell to be notified of future episodes.